Welcome to D&D Builds, where we have an outlet to make all sorts of ridiculous Dungeons & Dragons characters and stop driving the people in our lives insane with them. Today we're going to be building another Teen Titan, and we're going a bit darker this time with Raven. I had a vote over on my Patreon for pretty much a month's worth of builds, and she was one of the top votes. If you want more input on what I build, check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below. Just like these patrons, or the especially awesome player character patrons Theo Pollard and Biscuit Gaming, or going above and beyond that, my Dungeon Master level patrons Devin Happy, Benjamin, Tristan Bennett, and GameSteak, who get additional perks including having D&D sessions hosted by me that I stream right here on YouTube as well as over on Twitch. And then finally, the patron among patrons, my god tier level patron Kilo, who gets even more benefits, and I just cannot thank him enough for everything he does for this channel. He actually originally recommended this build in the first place. I still put it up for a vote just to be fair, and it definitely came out as one of the leaders. So let's dive in and build Raven. First things first, we gotta pick a race, and she's actually a daughter born to a demon, so we're gonna grab the race Tiefling. They're one of the more demonic races you can play in D&D, and they get some additional perks as part of this origin. They get hellish resistance, giving them resistance to fire damage. They can speak, read, and write common and infernal, which is kind of the language of the demons, and they get dark vision. Additionally, you can actually get a infernal legacy, which is part of the bloodline that you come from, and in this case, Trigon. But Raven isn't really a fan of her own legacy, so we're going to ignore the bloodline legacy perk and take a tiefling variant. This allows you to ignore that bloodline to a certain extent, and you can pick up an additional perk as part of this exchange. So we're going to grab a winged tiefling. I know Raven doesn't actually have wings, but she does have a cloak that's constantly billowing behind her, and being able to fly is a core part of her abilities. And this will make it so it's really easy to get this super early on. And since Raven is so tormented by her own bloodline and trying to get away from it, we're just going to grab the Haunted One background, which gives you a couple skills to choose from. So we're going to grab Arcana because you are very knowledgeable about magic in general, and we'll also grab Investigation because as part of the Teen Titans you do have to do some investigating from time to time. You also get to choose 2 languages, and one of them gets to be exotic. Since we already know Infernal, let's grab the other more demonic language with Abyssal. And if you checked out my Starfire video, you know what race we went there, so we're going to grab Elvish as well. And now before I dive into any stats, I want to pick a starting class first. It should be absolutely no surprise that most of her powers come from that connection she has to her demonic father. And while that relationship is very strained, if that's the source of her powers, we definitely got to start with Warlock. And the main ability stat for Warlocks is Charisma. Now you might not think of Raven as a particularly charismatic character. She's usually very dark and brooding and trying to stay to herself, but in D&D, Charisma isn't just about how outgoing you are and friendly and whatever else. It's also about controlling your inner power, especially when it comes to being a warlock, as well as partially controlling your emotions, and that's definitely a strong point for what Raven does. So with all of that in mind, let's finally jump into some stats. Using standard point buy, we're going to take our strength, bring it to 8, completely dumping it, then take our dexterity, bring it to 13, and then get another +1 from our racial bonus that we can put wherever we want, thanks to Tasha's, bringing it to 14, and then take our constitution, bring it to 14 as well, so that way you can take a fair amount of hits, and then take our intelligence, bring it to 12, because Raven is pretty darn smart and is very knowledgeable, especially when it comes to the arcane knowledge. Similarly, she is fairly wise, so we're going to also take our wisdom and bring it up to 12 as well, and then finally our charisma, which we mentioned before, we're going to boost to 14, and then get another +2 from being a tiefling. And now let's start diving into the build, because frankly, Raven has a heck of a lot of abilities. She's got darkness manipulation, dimensional travel, empathy powers that include controlling emotions, plus energy projection, precognition, flight, reshaping reality itself, and even some healing in certain scenarios. And then on top of all of that, she's very well known for having telekinetic abilities and telepathic abilities. So in order to cover all of this, it's going to get a little tricky. But let's start off with that first level of Warlock that we already established. At first level of Warlock, you get access to light armor and simple weapons, but we don't care too much about that. And then you get saving throws and wisdom and charisma. Then you get 2 skills, and we're just going to grab history because, like we said, you are pretty smart. And then we'll grab deception just for hiding your general emotions. Then right at first level, you get to choose an otherworldly patron, or in other words, a subclass. And considering this is a connection to your father Trigon, even though I'm really going to struggle every time I say his name and not saying Trigon, but this isn't Vash the Stampede, this is a giant demonic creature. So with Trigon's general look, Fiend and Archfey would both work fairly well. Another subclass I was super tempted to grab would be all about that gem that she holds on to, which in many cases is actually trapping the power of her own father in it. So I could take that and lean towards Pact of the Genie, but I don't really like that class for this build, so we're going to ignore that one. But looking into the history of Trigon, he is part of the universe of the Sphere of the Gods. He is known as Trigon the Ravager, Trigon the Terrible, and he's from a dimension beyond the Great Door of Azeroth. Sorry, that's going to be another tricky one for me. I mean Azarath. And an epic force from another dimension that is known by a ton of different names also reminds me of another particular creature, Cthulhu. And Cthulhu is known as a Great Old One, so that's what we're going to lean towards and grab the Warlock subclass, Great Old One. And this is perfect because many of the abilities linked to the Great Old One subclass are perfect for Raven. At first level, when you choose this subclass, you get Awakened Mind, starting to lean into some telepathic abilities. This ability allows you to touch the minds of other creatures and telepathically speak to any creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. Finally, at first level of Warlock, you also get some Pact magic, which is a special kind of magic that only Warlocks get access to because it automatically recharges on a short rest, and you get some cantrips as well. You get 2 cantrips at first level, and because you have those dark shadowy blasts that you can shoot out, there's no more perfect cantrip for that than Eldritch Blast. Then, just to amp up our telekinetic abilities a bit more, the other cantrip we'll grab is Mage Hand. Then you get to learn a couple spells at first level, and we're going to grab from the Great Old One spell list, Dissonant Whispers, because that seems pretty close to what Raven would do, because it's really just getting into somebody's head and causing some damage that way and scaring the crap out of them. And then we'll also grab Arms of Hadar, which just ripples out dark energy from you in these shadowy tendrils, which just fits very perfectly for Raven. Then at second level of Warlock, you get access to Eldritch Invocations, allowing you to boost your general Warlock abilities. You only get 2 of them at this level, so we're going to grab Agonizing Blast, boosting up your shadowy blast that you do, allowing you to add your Charisma modifier to each one of those blasts. And then we're also going to grab Armor of Shadows, allowing you to cast Mage Armor, and just thematically, this name just kind of fits because it's Armor of Shadows. You also learn one more spell at this level, but we're going to save it because at third level of Warlock, your Pact magic gets upgraded to second level spell slots. You also get to learn an additional spell at this level, so since we have 2 spells to use, we're going to grab Detect Thoughts because that's really sticking with the theme, and then we're also going to grab Darkness because, of course, it's Raven. Lastly, at third level of Warlock, you get to choose a Pact boon, and I was very tempted to grab Pact of the Tome because you do see Raven constantly reading from a book of Azarath, but in actuality, she doesn't really need this book at all. She's almost never actually reading it to this extent, except for in the Cartoon Network show. Otherwise, she doesn't need a tome at all. So we're going to ignore the Pact of the Tome and focus more on the gem that's in her head, grabbing Pact of the Talisman. With Pact of the Talisman, whenever you fail an ability check, you can add a d4 to that roll if you want to. Then at 4th level of Warlock, you get another cantrip, and so we're going to grab Toll the Dead. And you can think of this as infiltrating your enemy's minds and just reminding them of their own impending doom. And also sticking with that sort of mental attack type of aspect, we get an additional spell at this level, so we're going to grab Phantasmal Force, leaning into Raven's ability to reshape reality and cause some illusions. Additionally, at 4th level, you get an ability score improvement, so we're going to boost our charisma by 2 points, which boosts all of our abilities. Then at 5th level of Warlock, you get another spell, so we're going to focus on Raven's general knowledge of magic and grab Magic Circle. There's nothing more arcane than drawing a bunch of magic runes and creating a magic circle. Additionally, at this level, you get 1 more invocation, so we're going to grab Devil's Sight, so you can see through even magical darkness. Then at 6th level of Warlock, you get another spell, so we're going to grab Hunger of Hadar. This really opens a complete portal into the dark unknown horrors, and that seems way too fitting to pass up. Also at 6th level, you get another feature from being a Great Old One Warlock. You get Entropic Ward, allowing you to take any attack that would be against you and cause it to be at disadvantage, which you can think of as getting into the minds of your enemies on a different level. And if that attack misses because of it, the attacks that you make against that creature are at advantage until the end of your next turn. Then at 7th level of Warlock, we're going to go all out when it comes to dominating somebody's mind with Dominate Beast. And speaking of having complete control of your mind, we're going to grab the Eldritch Invocation at this level, Eldritch Mind, which gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws when it comes to maintaining concentration on a spell. Then the last thing I want to do at this level is trading in your Arms of Hadar for a different shadowy kind of spell, Shadow of Moyle. Now at this point, I would say that your character as being Raven has finally truly broken away from her father Trigon, and she's embracing her own magical abilities, and we're going to do a multi-class. And it should be no surprise that with the amount of charisma we have, we're jumping into Sorcerer. But right at level 1 of Sorcerer, you have to choose a Sorcerer subclass. And considering your general demonic heritage, this was actually really challenging. There are some perfect abilities that line up with a few different classes. We could have gone Shadow Sorcerer, and that's just so fitting as far as the visual look. And I was also tempted to go with an Aberrant Mind Sorcerer because there's plenty of psychic and telepathic type of spells. And even if we had taken it earlier, they have Revelation in Flesh, which allows their eyes to turn black. They would gain a flying speed and all sorts of very Raven themed abilities. But like I mentioned before, Raven has a ton of widespread abilities, and I needed to find a way to figure that out. So I did some research and I tried to dive into Trigon, not the anime, Trigon. I got it. And in diving into this research, I finally found it. I figured out the way to give her all of the abilities that I needed. Trigon himself had parents, and those parents were the Divine, which helped me out an insane amount in this build because now we can take the Sorcerer subclass, Divine Soul Sorcerer. The key point in this subclass is that not only do you get access to the Sorcerer spell list, you also get access to the Cleric spell list. So now you have so many more abilities that you can choose from. Right when you choose this subclass, you get some Divine Magic, giving you one additional spell right away, and that depends on your overall nature. So we're going to lean towards more of Raven's chaotic kind of nature, and this gives you the spell Bane. Additionally, at this level of being a Divine Soul Sorcerer, you get the feature Favored by the Gods, making it so that if you fail a saving throw or miss with an attack roll, you can roll 2d4 and add it to the total, possibly changing the outcome, which just rounds out the d4s you get to add to general rolls that you make, since you also get to add a d4 to your ability checks thanks to your Pact of the Talisman. Then additionally at this level, you get plenty of spell casting and some cantrips, but we're only going to focus on grabbing one more cantrip, and that's Prestidigitation, just because it's a general wide use kind of general magic stuff kind of cantrip. You do currently have access to additional cantrips, but we're not really going to worry about those too much. And while I might not be focusing on those cantrips, don't worry, any patrons that want to get that character sheet, I'll make sure that it's completely filled out with generally thematically appropriate cantrips. Then lastly, at first level of Sorcerer, you get to learn some spells. And this is much more standard spell casting than you get from being a warlock. So the first level spells we're going to grab are Shield and Detect Magic. So you can block plenty of attacks and be very well aware of the general magic around you because you are pretty knowledgeable when it comes to magic. Then at second level of Sorcerer, you get to learn one more spell. So we're going to grab Silvery Barbs just because it's a general good use spell that I'm sure we can figure out a way to make it fit. And then also at second level, you get 2 sorcery points, and you'll continue to get sorcery points as you level up in this class, with sorcery points equal to the amount of sorcerer levels that you have. And you can use these sorcery points for the other feature you get at level 2, Font of Magic, allowing you to trade sorcery points for additional refills of your spell slots to cast more spells. But that's not all you can do with it, because at level 3 of Sorcerer, you get Meta Magic, allowing you to alter your spells in significant ways using those sorcery points for it. So we're going to grab Quickened Spell and Twin Spell, because I definitely wasn't going to grab Subtle Spell, because it seems like Raven is constantly shouting about Azeroth, metronome, synthesizer, or whatever the hell she tries to say every single time. Yes, I know what it actually is, but I wanted to throw in some other random reference to how it sounds. So instead, we're just going to stick with Twin Spell and Quicken Spell. Then lastly, at third level of Sorcery, you get one more spell, and it can be from a second level spell slot. So we're going to lean into the whole like picking things up with your dark powers and smacking people with them, but this time with a spiritual weapon, which we can grab from the Cleric spell list. Then at fourth level of Sorcerer, you get to learn another cantrip, which we're not going to focus on, and another spell. So we're going to grab Calm Emotions for that empathic ability. Additionally, at this level, you get another ability score improvement, and so we can finally max out our charisma, boosting up all of our spellcasting ability. Then at fifth level of Sorcerer, you get to learn another spell that can be up to a third level spell slot. So we get to grab an ability that I was kind of struggling with initially, but when we got to choose this subclass, it made it pretty easy. We get to grab Life Transference, because Raven does have the ability to take on another person's pain, healing them but taking some damage for herself, and that's exactly what Life Transference does as a spell. Then at 6th level of Sorcerer, you get another spell, and we're going to grab the spell Spirit Guardians. This creates a full-blown aura around you that can damage your enemies, and we can think of this as when you let out that giant shadowy raven that surrounds you and just obliterates your enemies when you really need that extra boost of power. Additionally, at this level, from being a Divine Soul Sorcerer, you get empowered healing. So whenever you heal an ally within 5 feet of you and you're trying to roll dice to see how much you're healing them for, you can spend 1 sorcery point to reroll any number of those dice. Then at 7th level of Sorcerer, you get 1 more spell, and now it can be up to a 4th level spell. So we're going to grab some of that dimensional travel that she has the ability to do in certain situations and grab Dimension Door, allowing you to do some cool teleportation. Then at 8th level of Sorcerer, you get an ability score improvement, and since you already have maxed out Charisma, we're just going to boost up our dexterity so that we are a little harder to hit, and you get 1 more spell, so we're going to grab Divination. Raven does have some clairvoyant abilities, but they are kind of random, so we're going to grab Divination here, although we could have grabbed Clairvoyance a little earlier if we had built a little differently, but I wanted to make sure we got every ability possible, and this is the best way to do it. Then at 9th level of Sorcerer, we get another spell, and it can be up to a 5th level spell slot now, and so we're finally going to get one of the most important abilities that Raven uses on a consistent basis: Telekinesis. We could have grabbed this much earlier if we had stuck with Warlock, but again, I just really wanted to make sure we covered as many abilities as possible. Then at 10th level of Sorcerer, we get another meta magic option, and at this point, Raven would probably have warmed up to her team pretty well, so we're going to grab Careful Spell, allowing you to spend a sorcery point so all of your allies can succeed automatically on any saving throw that they might have been affected by if you're the one casting the spell. Also at this level, we get another cantrip, but we're not really going to focus on those. Additionally, you get 1 more spell, so we're going to go ahead and get a bit more technical with our teleportation and grab Teleportation Circle, which I feel like is more accurate to what we see in the shows and in the comics. Then at 11th level of Sorcerer, we get 1 more spell, and now it can be all the way up to 6th level. And really hammering home that emotion control of your enemies, we're going to grab the spell Eye Bite. This allows you to forcefully control your enemy's emotions, and that's just too spot on to pass up. Then at 12th level of Sorcerer, we get another ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our dexterity 1 more time, because while Constitution would help with concentration and our health, I feel like Raven isn't insanely hardy, so I want to lean more towards her being just more nimble and hard to hit. Then finally at 13th level of Sorcerer, we get 1 more spell that can be all the way up to a 7th level spell slot. So we're going to boost up that teleportation a little bit more with that spell Teleport. That brings us to the 20th level, and we have tons of powers and a wide range of abilities, which manages to somehow cover almost all of what Raven can do. And Raven can do a hell of a lot of stuff, so that was pretty impressive. And we still managed to somehow stick to being true to character, thanks to Trigon's origins. The one ability we did miss out on, which is kind of unfortunate, is Raven's ability to focus on her soul self, which I feel like the only way we can get that is with the spell Astral Projection. Being a Divine Soul Sorcerer, we would get access to this spell, but unfortunately it's a 9th level spell, so we don't have a spell slot high enough to be able to achieve it. But if that's the only thing we missed out on, I think we did pretty well overall. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below, whether you think it sucks or you think it's great, whatever, just let me know. And if there's any builds that you want in the future, let me know down there as well. I had a vote over on my Patreon for pretty much a month's worth of builds, and she was one of the top votes. If you want more input on what I build, check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below. Just like these patrons, or the especially awesome player character patrons Theo Pollard and Biscuit Gaming, or going above and beyond that, my Dungeon Master level patrons Devin Happy, Benjamin, Tristan Bennett, and GameSteak, who get additional perks including having D&D sessions hosted by me that I stream right here on YouTube as well as over on Twitch. And then finally, the patron among patrons, my God tier level patron Kilo Kilo, who gets even more benefits, and I just cannot thank him enough for everything he does for this channel. He actually originally recommended this build in the first place. I still put it up for a vote just to be fair, and it definitely came out as one of the leaders. Finally, if you made it to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s on your next D&D session. And believe me, my Dungeon Master patrons have managed to somehow make that true most of the time. But hopefully it especially holds true if you plan on playing as Raven.